Okay, so picture this: a historic WNBA All-Star Weekend, the kind that's supposed to be all about empowerment, unity, and oh yeah, getting paid what you're worth. The energy with high the statement where both the shirts at it, all pay us what you owe us. A full-on solidarity moment. But then Kelsey Plum grab a mic, and we just one offhand that jab, the entire narrative derailed faster than a post-game Twitter thread. If you're here for the real story and not to filter version, subscribe. And if you're sticking around for the next meltdown, you better definitely subscribe. Because instead of leave behind each other and the name of equal pay, Plum decided to throw some not so subtle shade at Team Clark. Yes, that Clark, Caitlin Clark, the rookie phenomenon, who basically is a WNBA marketing plan right now. And even though Caitlin wasn't even physically present, thanks to an injury that bench or from the festival, she somehow became headline, and not in the way anyone planned. The chaos started during which should have been a routine press conference. Nothing, while just a cue and with the league biggest names sitting side by side draped in those protest tees, ready to make a united front. But Kelsey Plum in the middle discussing importance of showing up and speaking out casually tosses garnered into conversation. Some people's teams didn't even show up to meeting. The room shifted, energy changed faces. Tense reporters perked up like they just sniffed viral potential. No names were mentioned technically, but the subtext was like loud. Everyone in that room and everyone watching the clips that would immediately make the rounds on Twitter, Instagram, and Sports Center knew exactly who she was referring to. Let's be real, Caitlin Clark is a WNBA right now. Oh, whether that's fair and not to the veterans who built this league on the ground up. She's a reason ticket sales, or by breaking records, she's a reason jerseys are flying off the shelves. And yes, she's also the reason people who never watched the WNBA game before suddenly arguing about free throws on TikTok. So calling her out, even indirectly in front of Mike, in front of cameras at that moment, it wasn't just petty, it was strategic, and it backfired. Because even though Caitlin was recovering from or injury, she wasn't about to sit there and take the heat like a passive rookie. Oh no. She responded not with a long clap back or note of apology, but with precision. One single comment on one to kills his Instagram posts. Some of us don't need meetings to make statements. Boom, that's it. No yelling, no hashtags. Just vibes, the kind of digital backhand that leaves a stain without even raising your voice. And suddenly all eyes were back on Caitlin, not because what she didn't do, but because of how effortlessly she flipped the narrative. The subtle power moved and just get people talking. It got people choosing sides. And spoiler alert, the internet has a favorite now. Here's where it gets even messy. The entire all-star van was supposed to be this banner moment of player empowerment. Everyone in the same shirt, speaking out about pay equity, making it crystal clear the league can keep profiting off these athletes without cutting a proper check. But instead, thanks to that one comment, the storyline pivoted. It went from look at us standing together to widen your team show, up to the meeting. The shirts were still on, but the unity had already cracked, and fans noticed. Commentators caught out immediately, like, why is Kelsey Plum calling out another team, especially one whose star players injured? When the protests with a stick together. If anything, it may be entire display or performative, like a PR play rather than a genuine moment of collective action. Caitlin's absence of the game only made things worse. Without all on the court, ticket resale prices nosedived. The arena had empty seats. Ratings took a dip. It was a kind of drop you can't ignore and put a spotlight on. Some the leave and awkwardly dancing around there. Massive undeniable dependence on one player, and Kelsey Plum's calm and didn't spark a feud. It exposed a fault line, because behind the public calls were quality and sisterhood. There's a growing tension the league that no one really wants to say out loud. Caitlin Clark is a rookie, but she's also the meal ticket. And that's uncomfortable for the players who've been grinding for years without getting even a fraction of that attention. Now that Caitlin fault, not really, she's is showing up, doing her job, drawing crowds, and not embarrass herself on live makes. But when someone becomes up powerful that quickly, the resentment brews, especially when the spotlight that should be shared suddenly feels like a solo act. Still, you gotta give Caitlin credit. She played this one perfectly, no petty beef. No dramatic interviews, just a sharp comment and a disappearing act. Let the headlines and the fans do the rest. And oh, did they? The internet, when feral threads broke down the feud like it was a Real Housewives union. Reddit dug up past interactions between the two. Old footage was clipped, analyzed. Slow down me feed. Every smile, side eye, and subtle shrug became evidence in the court of public opinion. And guess who walked away with a jury on her side? Let's just say there's a new MVP, a passive-aggressive and a dominant, and is not Kelsey Plum. Even media outlets, one that usually avoid leaning into gossip, couldn't help but cover the drama. ESPN ran with the headline. Bleacher Report posted a real even late night Twitter,
you can save £50
which usually dibs
per
out of
person.
sports, had
That's
opinions. The feud
£200
was no longer niche, it was mainstream. And that's kind of point right, because as much as the WNBA wants to push unity and empowerment, and they should, this whole situation underlines a deeper contradiction. The league is asking for respect, recognition, and equal pay. Again, they should, but also leaning hard on the commercial appeal. One single star to get there, that's a tough spot. On one hand, Caitlin Clark's popularity has brought unprecedented attention to the WNBA. On the other, that attention comes with expectation, guns and egos, and apparently locker room tension. So what now? Well, Kelsey Plum took a bit of a PR. It here her moment of real talk didn't land the way she thought. Instead of sparking accountability, it sparked backlash. Fans felt like she broke rank and kicked someone while they were down. Literally, Caitlin, she came out of this looking cool, composed, and maybe just a little intimidating. The kind of player who doesn't need to scream to be heard, who can turn one comment into a tidal wave, a silent assassin in sneakers. The league, let's just say they've got some things are figured out, like how to balance their rising star power with respect and support the veterans who built the house. And maybe, just maybe, how to avoid letting a 12-second soundbite steal entire weekend. In the end, the all-star game will be remembered less for who scored the most points or who or what, and more for that press conference. And that comment the shirt said, "Pay is what you owe us." But the real cause of this drama, public trust, team unity, and a whole lot of media spin. Moral of the story: if you're going to make a statement, make sure to uplift the whole team, not just your mic drop moment. And if you're Caitlin Clark, maybe you don't even need to show up to win a narrative. Sometimes the loudest message is a one whispered under an Instagram post. Let's be honest, this wasn't just some spicy press conference moment. This was a full-blown turning point in WNBA drama, the kind of off-court chaos makes fans forget the box score and refresh their feet instead. Because what we just witnessed wasn't about one comment. It was about pressure, about power, about what happens when you put a spotlight the size of one rookie's shoulders, and an act surprise when things start to crack. And crack they did after Kelsey Plum's call up. The press started doing what they always do, digging, theorizing, amplifying. Reports began to leak that this wasn't just a one-off line. Allegedly, there had already been tension brewing behind the scene for weeks. Some players feel that Caitlin and or squad weren't fully integrating into the league culture, that they weren't showing up, and way veterans had hoped. Others whispered at the meeting Plum reference was actually about organizing protests and ensuring everyone was aligned on the messaging. So when Team Clocked didn't show, it wasn't seen as a scheduling conflict. It was interpreted as a statement, a silent opt-out, a solidarity. Whether that's true or not doesn't really matter, because perception is reality, and a let it fighting tooth and nail for national attention. In this moment, it handed the internet a fresh new narrative. Suddenly, Caitlin wasn't just a phase of lead. She was also being painted as a problem, too big to famous to silent when it counted. And yet the backlash didn't hit her, not really. If anything, it ricocheted, because what Caitlin Clark represents is complicated. She's a symbol of what be possible for women's basketball. When everything finally clicks: media coverage, fan engagement, corporate sponsorship, cultural relevance. She's a rare case, a rookie being treated like a 10-year vet, because her brand is just that strong. And that's what makes her both powerful and polarizing. Some players see a rise in feelings. The others feel or raised. The league's been around for nearly 30 years, but suddenly feels like those before Caitlin and after Caitlin. That kind of spotlight Doesn't to shine it burns. So Plum frustration is probably not just about one meeting, it's about years of hustle being overshadowed by one person who walked in and immediately became headline. But here's the thing that's not Caitlyn thought she didn't ask to be the golden child. She just says she played her heart out in college, broke records, stayed classy, stayed consistent, and brought her audience with her. She's not a fluke, she's a phenomenon. And the league knows it. Behind the scenes, executives are fully aware that Caitlin Clark sells tickets, her name spikes viewership, her jersey prints money. So even if there's tension in the locker room, there's no confusion in the boardroom. This is their cash cow. And protecting our image, priority number one. That's what makes Kelsey Plum's outburst even more surprising. It wasn't as a stray comment. It was a riskier call, the league's crown jewel. Unless you're ready for some fallout. And oh, did it come the day after the press conference? Social media split like Moses part of the Red Sea. On one side, diehard Caitlyn stans who viewed her as a victim of jealousy and gatekeeping. On the other, longtime WNBA supporters who felt the newer players, especially the media darlings, need to earn their stripes instead of bypassing the system. It wasn't as a feud anymore. It was a generational divide. The veterans versus the rookies, the grinders versus the glam. And somewhere in the middle, a lead try and convince everyone they're all on the same team. Good luck with that, because now everything Caitlyn does or doesn't do is viewed to a magnifying glass. Skip a meeting, you're not committed. Stay silent, you're being passive. Say too much, you're ungrateful. It's a lose-lose scenario. And it's eerily familiar to what we've seen with other breakout stars and other industries. The second they become too big, people stop rooting for them and start resenting them. Meanwhile, Kelsey Plum, she didn't exactly walk away from this clean. Even some of her supporters admitted that her delivery was off. The message may have been rooted in something real, but calling someone out during a moment meant to be about unity. It gave off high school in the hallway energy. And for someone who's been in the league long enough to know better, it felt like a tactical fumble. Not to mention the irony, because while the players were wearing shirts that demand respect and equal treatment, one of their own was using a global platform to publicly single out a teammate. That's not solidarity, that's sabotage. And here's what's really wild. All this overshadowed the actual point, the protest, the pay aqua. The conversation got drowned out by the feud. The media stopped talking about salaries and started to setting side eyes. The hashtag became drama fodder. And for a movement that was opposed bring attention to the league's systemic issues, it ended up exposing the ones inside the locker room. Poetic, isn't it? But let's bring it back to Caitlyn for a second, because her response, if you can even call it, that deserves a gold medal in media strategy. One cryptic comment, one subtle shade. And that's it. No press tour, no emotional "I'd you live," just a silence and a smirk. And it worked, because sometimes saying nothing says everything. She knew that if she jumped into the chaos, it would become a war. Instead, she let Plum's comment hang in the air, and then watch as public opinion turned her into the cool, composed protagonist, a silent queen, letting her throne speak for itself. And as for the lead, they're scrambling, because the worst kept secret in sports right now is that the WNBA markings. Tragedy, you become dangerously Caitlyn-centric. And while that's great when she's winning games and charming press conferences, it becomes a PR liability the second she misses a meeting or skips an event. Which brings us to the real question. Is this sustainable? Can the WNBA afford to build his entire media ecosystem around one person? And what happens if she gets injured again? What happens if she pulls a burnout move and takes a step back, or worse? What if she stuffed playing nice? The truth is, this drama was a warning shot. It showed us how fragile the balance really is, how quickly the narrative can shift, and how the league needs to figure out its identity beyond one superstar. Because right now, the WNBA is walking a tightrope. On one side, the promise of mainstream success. On the other, the risk of internal implosion. And as much as we love the tea, let's not pretend this is just harmless gossip. These moments have ripple effects. They shape how new fancy league. They determine what clips get reposted and what stories get told. And the WNBA want to grow. It can afford to let petty infighting replace powerful messaging. So here we are, one weekend, one press conference, one viral comment, and now everything feels different. Kelsey Plum might have lit the match, but the league handed her the lighter. And Caitlin Clark, she didn't just walk away and touch. She walked away stronger, more iconic, more watched, more powerful. Which means the next time someone come for her, they better be ready, because Clark may be quiet, but she's not soft. And if there's one thing his entire debacle proves, it's that the real power move is staying unbothered. All right, let's keep going, because the story doesn't stop at one shady comment and a cryptic Instagram reply. If anything, that was just the pilot episode. What happened next turned into a slow-burning feud, one that exposed cracks in the WNBA, a glossy exterior, and honestly a gay reality TV a run for its money. After the press conference, Fallout League insider started whispering, and while no one went on a record, the body language on the court said enough. During warm-ups, certain glances weren't exchanged, celebrations felt forced, group photos looked tense, and fans noticed you don't need to be a lip reader to clock icy vibes when entire bench stops clapping after someone thinks that three. Now remember, Caitlin Clark wasn't even at the game. She was still nursing her injury, away from the cameras, away from the drama. And yet somehow her name was still trending for 3 days straight. Every time a player posted the story or sure to highlight, fans would flood the comments. Where's Caitlin? Did she skip another meeting? You can respond. It was wild. And this is where the power dynamics really started to show, because while the league tried to pivot conversation back to unity and celebrating women's sports, the internet wasn't having it. This wasn't as a sports moment anymore and turned into a full-blown culture war. And side were clear on one end. You had WNBA traditionalist fans who've been here for the jump, who watched Kelsey Plum and others build a lead brick by brick for them. Caitlin's sudden fame felt like someone skipping line, not just a new player, but a new era, and one that wasn't giving of credit to the vets on the other side. The Clark I've new fans, casuals, gens. He stands out with loyalists and people who discovered the WNBA because they saw Caitlin Clark highlight on TikTok. They don't care about hierarchy, they care about town charisma. And let's be honest, drama. So when Plum dropped that line, it didn't just poke the bear, it launched a civil war. And here's where things got even messier. Sponsors, yep, the corporate side of things jumped in suddenly. Companies I've been quietly testing the WNBA waters started pulling some strings behind the scenes, because guess what? A brand just spent 6 figures on a Caitlin Clark campaign doesn't love seeing her being targeted by one of the league's top veterans. It's bad optics. So meetings were had, calls were made, and reportedly a few uncovered conversations were held with PR reps about tone, narrative, and damage control. Translation: don't mess with the money. Meanwhile, Kelsey Plum tried to walk it back, kind of. She didn't issue a formal apology, but she made a few vague peacekeeping calm as an interview. Used things like "we're all passionate" or "tensions run high," or "at the end of the day, we're on the same team." Nice try. But the damage was done, and fans weren't buying. Clean up that comment on our post refill with popcorn mode use and snarky digs like "still mad she sells more jersey." His or you sound like someone who doesn't trend brutal. And yet somehow Caitlin kept quiet. Another power play. No interviews, no shade, just subtle posts about recovery, workouts, and gratitude. The kind of content that doesn't fan the flames but still earns millions. He likes. It was clear she was gonna feed the drama. She was going to outlast it. And let's be real, it worked. Because slowly the conversation started to shift. The initial backlash, it mellowed out. The tension still there, but quieter. And Caitlin back on her feet, back in training, and very much back in control of or narrative. But the league was sweating. Because now they were facing a terrifying question. What if this happens again? Would have another player publicly calls her out? Would have more locker room beef spills into media? Worse, Caitlin gets sick of being the punching bag and started pushing back. Suddenly, the WNBA wasn't just managing athletes, they were managing egos, personal brands, fan bases. Is the kind of stuff the NBA has dealt with for years. But for the W, it's new territory, high stakes, and very, very public. And that's when the league did something subtle but telling. They shifted the narrative. In the weeks following the All-Star debacle, PR efforts ramped up. Promo spots start featuring multiple stars instead of just Caitlin. Media interviews became or focus on the future. The lead now just a phase of it. It was a clear attempt to rebalance the spotlight to make sure fans didn't think the WNBA was just a Caitlin Clark show. But let's be honest, it is a Caitlin Clark show, at least for now. She's the one selling out arenas, she's the one bringing in new viewers. And whether that's fair or not to the vet,